Welcome everybody to Connor Prairie's Curious Conversations Speaker Series, brought to you by Connor Prairie and Indiana Humanities. Round of applause to them for everything they've had to deal with. So they have been kind enough to help sponsor this event. We have talked so far about fur-bearing mammals, we've talked about Robert's settlement, we've talked about farming in the 19th century. So logically, we are now going to talk about the Klan. No, it is very relevant this year. It's the 100th anniversary of D.C. Stevenson's trial, which occurred in this room. He was found guilty of murder and rape of Madge Oberholzer, and it led to the downfall of the Klan in Indiana. It exposed all their dirty secrets, and so it is a momentous event in this county. Our speaker tonight is Dr. James H. Madison. He is the Thomas and Catherine Miller Professor Emeritus of History at Indiana University Bloomington, where he taught for 4 decades. His books include Eli Lilly, A Life, Slinging Donuts for the Boys, An American Woman in World War II, Hoosiers, A New History of Indiana, A Lynching in the Heartland, Race and Memory in America, and most recently, The Ku Klux Klan in the Heartland. He has spoken to dozens of public audiences across the state, and he is the recipient of the Eugene and Marilyn Glick Lifetime Author Achievement Award and the Indiana Historical Society's Living Legends Award. So please give it up for Dr. James Madison.
Thank you, Dylan. And thank you all for coming out on a beautiful summer evening into this beautiful courthouse. You know, the Indiana courthouses are among our most special sacred places. These are sacred places where the civic life of the community happens. And to have a building like this remain and be the center, the anchor of the community, I think is just magical. Of course, we're in a special courtroom tonight, and Dylan's already mentioned that, and I'll say just a little bit more about it. I do want to thank Connor Prairie and Indiana Humanities for sponsoring this. I want to give a shout out to the good people of Hamilton County who have been working not just this year, but for a long time to tell the stories of all the people of Hamilton County. And I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to call out David Highway or Brian Glover or anyone else like that, because then I'd miss some people. So let me start. I have a lot to do, and we're supposed to finish in an hour or so. And so I'm going to go very quickly. In order to talk about the resistance to the Klan, I need to first talk about the Klan itself and give you a brief understanding of what it was, who the people who joined were, and then talk about resistance, and then finally I want to talk down about the ideals of the Klan, the principles of the Klan that persisted long after the Klan was gone, and maybe, certainly in my opinion, down to the present. So, we have a hard story here. We have a story that includes a lot of unhappiness. This happens to be a pet peeve, of more than a pet peeve, an obsession of mine, that we want to not, too many of us too often want to not tell unhappy stories. We want to tell smiley face stories. We want to make up myths that contradict the facts. We want to tell history that pretends to be patriotic while sweeping under the carpet things we don't like. Those are bedtime stories for children. Adults in a democracy need history. And we need history that is based upon what scholars call primary sources, the evidence. And so when someone comes up to me, which happens fairly often, and tells me something about the Klan, and often it's skewed, incorrect, just wrong, or stupid even, and I hide my face, I hope, behind a nice smile and say, well, what is your evidence for that? And this is what historians do. We base our subject in evidence, primary sources from the time. All right. The Klan existed in Hamilton County and all 92 counties in Indiana. One of the major myths of the Klan was that it was a fluke. It came out of nowhere for a brief period of time, and therefore it's a little sidebar in the textbook maybe, but we don't need to spend much time talking about it. The Klan was not a fluke event. It came out of the soil and the culture of Indiana and of America. Here's the first sentence of my book on the Klan. The Ku Klux Klan was as dark as the night and as American as apple pie. Now, I'm not prepared to debate that because I think I have the evidence for that statement. The book is evidence, and it's got a lot of footnotes if you want to follow them, for that statement. As American as apple pie, not a fluke event, not a marginal event. And so you have all these efforts to claim that the people who joined the Klan didn't really know what they were doing. They were dupes. They were manipulated by artful dodgers, by shysters, snake oil salesmen, and others. That's simply not true. Now, we have 3 Klans in American history. The first, after the Civil War, in the South. We won't talk about that. The third, in our own time, beginning in the 1960s. I have a little bit to say about that Klan. The Klan I want to focus on tonight is the Klan of the 1920s, the largest, the most important, the most meaningful of them. And it existed across the country, from New Jersey to California to Wisconsin to Oregon. It certainly existed in Indiana, among the most fertile places for the Klan to take hold. Who joined the Klan? This is a pamphlet from the Indiana Historical Society Library. A lot of the evidence for my book about the Klan comes from the Indiana Historical Society Library, a treasure trove of documents and sources. Who joined the Klan? The myth is that they were hillbillies, the unteachables, the unwashed, the ignorant, all the aspersions we cast upon stereotypes of that sort. That myth is no longer acceptable because we have good evidence. We have membership lists, including some, as many of you will know, from Noblesville and elsewhere. And scholars have studied these membership lists and have shown that the Klan was composed of good Hoosiers, middle class, lower middle class, ministers, nurses, teachers, foremen in factories, good Hoosiers, not the marginal people. They were bound together, and this may be the most important thing to understand the Klan, you need to know, by their conviction that they were 100% American because of 3 qualities that they shared. They were white, they were Protestant, and they were native born. That trio made them 100% American, and of course, it made them superior to all of those who were not one or another of those. The Klan was deeply embedded with the Protestant churches, and the Protestant churches were deeply embedded with the Klan. Now, you may not want to hear this, but this is based again on evidence. The Methodists, the Baptists, the Disciples of Christ, and the other mainline Protestant denominations provided the membership, the support, and much of the leadership for the Ku Klux Klan in Indiana. That's a complicated subject. I've got a whole chapter on it. I can't explain it all tonight. I'm just asking you to accept it because it is a fact. And so on Sunday mornings, men in white robes and hoods would march into a Protestant church, march down the center aisle, put a cash offering on the altar, while the congregation and choir sang "Onward, Christian Soldiers," the great hymn of the Ku Klux Klan. One of the other myths about the Klan is that it was violent, that the Klan lynched people and murdered people. There is no evidence that I've seen or any other historian has seen, credible evidence of any Klan lynching. Let me say that again. The Klan lynched no one in Indiana in the 1920s. There was a bombing, there was some violence. There was a bombing in this little town in northwestern Indiana of a Catholic parsonage. Horrible, no one was hurt, but a horrible act of violence. And there were some other things of that sort in Indiana. But what's significant is there's very, very little of that kind of violence. They intimidated people, they threatened them, of course, but not real violence. There's one Klan lynching we need to mention here because it comes up. And I know something about this because I wrote a book about it, and you can read it. It's probably, I'm sure it's in your library here. It happened in Marion, Indiana on August the 7th, 1930. It is a horrible event. It is one of the greatest tragedies in Indiana history, in my opinion. And I spent a lot of time trying to sort it out and figure out what happened and why it happened and what it means, especially what it means in the long sweep of our history. But among the most important things to say about that lynching, well, it's not among them, it's one of the things to say, is that it was not a Klan lynching. First of all, the Klan is perfectly dead by 1930 in all practical sense, and the Klan was not part of this lynching in Marion, Indiana. It's not a Klan lynching. There are no Klan lynchings. Now, the Klan organizes, builds its strength and power by pointing out the enemies of the 100% Americans. And the Klan had a megaphone to do this with brilliance and skill. They were very good at identifying the people who were harming America, who were tearing down America, who were out to hurt you. Number one on the list are Catholics. Anti-Catholicism is something that older folks here may remember. You may remember the 1960 election when a Catholic candidate for president was controversial in many places. It's pretty much gone now in America, but in the 20s it flourished. Anti-Catholicism came over on the first ships from Europe among American Protestants, deep, 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 and in the 1920s, very, very deep. The Catholics were the enemies. They were engaged in all kinds of conspiracies. I like this one from the Rushville newspaper. 100,000 Negroes are going to become Catholic priests. Okay. What's your evidence for that? Immigrants were the enemy, of course. Immigrants are always the enemy for native-borns of a certain sort. Immigrants were tearing, and many of them were Catholic, of course. Immigrants are tearing down America. They don't talk like we do. They eat strange foods, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so in 1924, the American Congress passed the most stringent immigration law in our history. It is a landmark in American immigration policy. It essentially closed the doors, except for selected white immigrants from northwestern Europe. Italians, Poles, Greeks, we don't want them. Just think what kind of food we'd be eating if we didn't have pasta, kielbasa, gyro. I mean, that 24 immigration policy lasted until the mid-1960s in our country. Jews are the enemy, of course. I hardly need say, of course. Anti-Semitism also came over on the first ships and deep in the soil, deep in the culture. It flourished, and it tends to, for some reason, wax and wane in America, but it certainly was flourishing in the 1920s. This is when Ivy League colleges, Ivy League universities, created quota systems for Jews. Only a handful of Jews could get admitted from the 1920s forward to Harvard or Yale or other such universities. This is Henry Ford, a brilliant manufacturer and a very stupid, prejudiced man in other ways, in my opinion. That's an opinion, but I could back that up with a little bit of evidence. His Dearborn Independent was nationally published and was full of anti-Semitic diatribes. He gave credence, and this is what happens when a person like Henry Ford, a notable, a TikTok person, gets a platform, and they may know nothing whatsoever, but because they have name recognition, Henry Ford, the Model T, he must know what he's talking about. Lies, lies, lies appeared in the Dearborn Independent. 1 John 1:17 says, "If And here's a wonderful example of anti-Semitism at the local level. There are going to be no Jewish businesses left in Indianapolis because the Klan is going to boycott them all. So said Daisy Douglas Barr, one of the best. Daisy Douglas Barr was a very smart, sophisticated woman, a Quaker minister, vice president of the Indiana Republican Party, and one of the major speakers and recruiters for the Ku Klux Klan in Indiana. She went around the state preaching in churches and in halls and recruiting. Daisy Douglas Barr. And African Americans are the enemy, of course. African Americans. Someone here tonight told me they just watched a little bit of this classic film, one of the great films in American film history. If you haven't seen it, you might want to take a look at it because it brings Birth of a Nation, D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation, brings home in a visceral way the racism that's, again, in the soil of white America in the 1920s. This film showed in the 1920s in movie theaters across the state. It's a silent film, but by the early 20s, all Noblesville, all courthouse towns had theaters, many 2 or 3, and they showed this film on the main streets in the courthouse squares of Indiana. So these are the enemies: Catholics, immigrants, Jews, African Americans. Put them on a raft in the middle of the ocean and sink them, this Klan speaker said. 100% Americans need to fear these people. They will never be 100% Americans. It is impossible for them to be real Americans, true Americans, and they are going to causing all kinds of dangers in this country. Now, mixed up in all of this is the theory of race suicide or race decline, and it runs across Klan propaganda. We white people, we're being overrun by these other people, them, those people, those 62%, not 100% American people, and soon we're going to be the minority, and eventually we're going to be wiped out, just as the Native Americans were wiped out. And added to this is good old American science. This is not a happy story. Some of the best scientists in the country in the teens and 20s studied what was called eugenics and came up with these scientific notions of race, that there were biological reasons that some people were better than other people, and they created this racial hierarchy. It should not surprise you that at the top of the hierarchy are white people, and at the bottom are blacks and Africans. This science, which was very popular and widely broadcast in America in the 1920s and beyond, Hitler, of course, took the American science and put it to his own uses. This science, of course, I hardly need to say this, but I'm going to, was not science. It was BS. It was poppycock. It was absurd. Now, in addition to enemies, the Klan was also a reform movement built around countering these enemies, but doing positive, in the Klan's view, positive things. And the leading reform in most of the Klan mission for many Klan members was prohibition. This was a time when it was illegal to manufacture, sell prohibition. Even Indiana, the legislature passed a great, General Assembly in 1924 passed a great law. If you had an empty bottle of gin in your car and were caught by a policeman and you smelled gin in the bottle, you were taken in. You had violated the prohibition law for smelling, the sniff test. So prohibition was a major mission, objective for the Klan. They spent a lot of time trying to force prohibition, sometimes using vigilante activity. Klansmen along a road in robes and hoods stopped a car and searched for alcohol. Another was this outrage of sin and sex in 1920s America. All kinds of things were going on. These flappers with their flimsy dresses, doing all kinds of dances in dance halls outside of courthouse towns like Noblesville. I don't know where the one was here. I'll bet there was one somewhere. Their Ford parked in the parking lot, and you know what happens in that Ford automobile later at night. And then the movies. And I must say, I spent a bit of time reading about the movies of the 1930s, and they are really quite risque. I was rather surprised, shocked, actually. This flapperism, disregard for convention. Oh, this really upset many Klan people. And the heart of it all was on Indiana Avenue in Indianapolis, which most of you will know was the center of African American culture and nightlife and business. And did young white people go there for fun? You bet their socks they did, because there were bars and clubs and music. Oh, the music was so good. And dancing. And did young white women dance with black men on Indiana Avenue? Yes. Outrage. Now, I spent several years working on this book, and I cannot precisely document this, but I came away with the conclusion that most of the people who joined the Klan were true believers. They actually believed in most or large parts of the notions and ideas that I've just shared with you. They were not manipulated. They did not join because their brother joined, though some did, of course. But they believed that they were 100% Americans, and that gave them opportunities and obligations. And here they stand, between the American flag and the Christian flag. Their hoods are pulled up, because why be embarrassed? We're not embarrassed to be members of the Klan. Something else that's very important to me about this Klan is that these were not a bunch of rubes. This was a very sophisticated business organization. The day I came across this manual in the Indiana Historical Society Library, it's like this thick. It's full of detailed description of how you run a local Clavern meeting, how you sell robes, how you organize a parade, how you do all the business of running an organization with hundreds of thousands of members, a sophisticated business organization that knew how to put on performances. They had pizzazz. They had public relations sophistication. And so Klan parades were the best you've ever seen. Never seen a parade like these Klan parades down the main street of virtually every town in Indiana. They put on these massive rallies, which always ended with the burning of a cross, sometimes 3 crosses. The biggest one, maybe the biggest one in the whole country, was in Kokomo. The conclave in Kokomo, D.C. Stevenson showed up in an airplane, et cetera, et cetera. A massive 3-day celebration of the Ku Klux Klan. They published their own sheet music. This is one of the favorites. It's the Bright Fiery Crosses sung to the tune of Onward Christian Soldiers. They made their own records at Jeanette Studios in Richmond, Indiana. They published this kind of sheet music by the women of the Klan. It's important to state this. Women also joined the Klan. We don't know how many. We don't have, as far as I know, any membership lists for women, but a lot of women joined. They had their own separate organizations, and occasionally there's evidence that the women were a little bit annoyed because the men tried to keep them in a certain place. Can you believe that? They tended to focus on so-called women's issues, on school, on children, on putting Bibles in schools, a major Klan women project. The Klan had its own bands, and there was a consensus that the best Klan band was the Muncie Band. I like this photograph. You may not be able to see it, but I always assumed that the saxophone was the instrument of the devil because it causes these flappers to really dance on the floor, and you don't want that. And right here in the Klan band, here's a nice saxophone. I love this photograph. They made their own films, at least 2 that we know of. And these films also showed in movie theaters, on courthouse squares, in churches, in church basements, Klan films. They had, perhaps most importantly, their own newspaper, the Fiery Cross. This is the issue. I chose this issue because it's reporting the 1924 Indiana election in November of 24. The Protestant ticket sweeps the state. The Klan ticket, the Klan organized very sophisticated voting, get out voters and vote for Klan candidates. The identified Klan candidates, almost all of whom were Republican. The Klan was in partnership, I was going to say cahoots, in partnership with Protestant churches and the Republican Party. Each of those 3 saw advantages to join the other 2 in this crusade. And in 1924, they won big time in Indiana. The majority of the new members of the Indiana General Assembly were Klansmen or Klan friends. And most importantly, the governor. There he is, Ed Jackson. Boy, Ed Jackson. My candidate for the worst governor in the history of Indiana. There are other possibilities, perhaps, but to me, it's not a contest. Ed Jackson should have gone to jail. He was let off on a fraud sort of thing. Big buddies, D.C. Stevenson stood next to him in his reception line at his inauguration in early 1925. He and Stevenson were big buddies and partners, and that's where Madge Oberholzer probably met Stevenson for the first time. The Klan newspaper, the Fiery Cross, is digitized. We have wonderful digitized newspapers now. I'd still be working on this book if it weren't for those digitized newspapers. It's just amazing how quickly you find things when it's digitized. And if you have a slight interest, check out the Fiery Cross online, the digital, and read a few issues, and then put in a search term, a word, a town, a place, an idea, and you'll be amazed what comes up. And then you'll step back and you'll think, really? That's what they were selling the people? But again, it's serious, it's real. So, that's my brief history of the Klan. And I'm doing okay on time, but I got to keep moving here. What do you do about it? What did Hoosiers do about it? Some joined. About a third of adult white native-born men joined, as near as we can estimate. And maybe an equal number of women, but we don't know. You can be silent, and many Hoosiers were that. They just were silent. I'm not going to talk about it. Many newspapers were silent. Many politicians were silent. The Democratic Party refused for a long time to take a position, even though the Republican Klan Party was attacking them. And the majority of Hoosiers were in either of those 2 camps. They joined the Klan or they were silent. A minority spoke out. They began to step up slowly. The Klan first appears in 22, and there's, what is this? Who is this? And it took a while. By 24, it's pretty clear what the Klan is about. And by then, some people are beginning to say, whoa, wait a minute. This is not America. We have to stand against this. And so who stood up? Who resisted the Klan? It's perfectly sensible. The enemies of the Klan were the ones who led the resistance. Above all, Catholics. Catholics were the largest in number. They had moved into the middle class. They already had their own university in South Bend, which really annoyed a lot of Protestants. I mean, you know, we got Wabash and DePaul and Earlham, and now you want a university, you people? Yeah, we do. But this is the first, maybe I shouldn't say first, this is an early inkling of movement organization across religious lines. Interfaith organization, which became very popular in the 1940s and 50s because some Jews, African Americans, even some Protestants joined the Catholics in their very well-organized American Unity League, the AUL, a Catholic-led organization that was devoted to putting down the Klan, to attacking the Klan, to mocking the Klan. And the leader, a very, very fascinating guy named Pat O'Donnell, was just brilliant on the speaking trail. He had that fiery Irish ability to connect to his audiences, and people loved Mad Pat when he showed up in Fort Wayne. But look what Mad Pat says. I love this. Here's an opinion. In my opinion, we're a little obsessed with identity politics. I mean, I'm left-handed, and I want all left-handers to get together and put down right-handers, or at least be ahead of them in line. That kind of identity politics is important. It's community. But it also sometimes obliterates what Pat O'Donnell is saying here. This is not a Negro problem. It's not a Jewish problem. It's an American fight. We're fighting for America, for all Americans, he's saying. And that's the message, I think, that the AUL tried to send and that I find very appealing. They had a newspaper called Tolerance, and we don't have a full run of this so far as I know, but we have enough issues to get a good sense. It was brilliantly written, full of satire, mocking the Klan, making fun of them, telling jokes and stories, and purloining, stealing membership lists and publishing them, so your name's in Tolerance if you belonged to the Klan. African Americans been to organize. The NAACP was the major civil rights, a very, very important organization, formed in Indiana towns branches in the teens, but in the early 1920s, the Klan gave the NAACP a real kick in the keister and really caused them to stand up and to organize and to build a opposition to the Klan. In 1924, because of NAACP action, voter turnout, and publicity, and identifying candidates, for the first time in Indiana history, African American voters deserted the party of Abraham Lincoln, the Republican Party, and voted for the Democratic Party in 1924. That's a very significant shift that's going to become much more important later on. So the NAACP, which had branches in a dozen or so towns and cities in Indiana in the 20s, provides an important resistance to the Klan. Again, we don't know a whole lot about this, but we know that some Jewish rabbis spoke out courageously. Rabbi Fairlicht in Indianapolis in particular, who also, and I like this about the resistance and opposition, they were very good at using humor, at getting under the skin of the Klan. And Rabbi Fairlicht had a twinkle in his eye, I think, when he said some of the things he said about the Klan. Jewish resistance. Most of the newspapers were either silent or neutral. In 22, 23, 24, even 25. In 25, the Indianapolis Times began a large investigative journalism project and really began to report seriously, deeply on the Klan in Indiana. In 1928, the Indianapolis Times won the Pulitzer Prize for its reporting on the Ku Klux Klan, a major achievement. And there's the example of George Dale, the editor of the Muncie Post-Democrat, who was vicious in attacking the Klan and didn't always tell the truth in his newspaper. In fact, often didn't tell the truth. He had a hole in his hat that he said was a bullet fired by a Klan member. Maybe untrue. But he did call a Muncie judge out as a Klansman and corrupt. And for that, the judge sent him to jail. And was George Dale happy to be photographed in a Delaware County jail with 2 other prisoners for speaking out against the Klan. This surprised me. The Indiana Bar Association in 1923, meeting at French Lick, where the alcohol flowed. That's why they always met at French Lick. Passed a resolution condemning the Klan. And I still don't understand. It was courageous. These are mostly small-town lawyers. They practice right across the street here. You belong to an organization that condemned the Klan? That might not be good for client attraction. I don't know, but they did it. And this Conrad Wolf lawyer from Kokomo was a very outspoken opponent of the Ku Klux Klan. There were some politicians who stood up in the Republican Party, the party of the Klan. And this is the best example. Lou Shank, who was mayor of Indianapolis, a very popular mayor, who forced some legislation attacking the Klan, and then in 24 ran in the Republican primary for the gubernatorial nomination and got soundly whipped by Ed Jackson. There were a few cultural figures who stood out. Meredith Nicholson did. Meredith Nicholson, one of Indiana's great authors, was an outspoken opponent of the Klan. And a few people here, at least, maybe many, know that the Indiana Humanities Organization now has its headquarters in Meredith Nicholson's home, a beautiful structure on North Delaware Street. Booth Tarkington, maybe our best writer until Kurt Vonnegut, in my opinion. Booth Tarkington was on the wrong side of history here in his support of the Klan, basically saying they're good people on all sides. And then we have events like this. We have occasions where people, individuals or groups, stood against the Klan in a more physical way, and the best case is the Notre Dame. The Klan called it a riot in South Bend in 1924, where the president of South Bend, of course a Catholic clergyman, told students, the Klan's coming to town to have a rally, and you will not leave campus. I don't want any Notre Dame student to leave campus, just stay on campus. And students being students, ran downtown and engaged in all kinds of shenanigans. They directed Klan people, thousands of them came driving and on trains. They directed them to the wrong place. It wasn't the rally, they directed them opposite directions. And they engaged in some fisticuffs. The story is where the Notre Dame got the title Fighting Irish, because they fought. They even threw potatoes at one of the Klan crosses. This is a wonderful photograph. It's a sophomore at Notre Dame who's, after the riot, displaying his war trophies, a Klan robe and hood, which he has ripped off of a Klan member arriving in South Bend for a rally. The Fiery Cross Fiery Cross newspaper went on for weeks and weeks about this riot, about how vicious and violent these Catholic people were, and the terrible things they did in South Bend. This is the hook for a wonderful exhibit at the Indiana Historical Society. It's called Resist, and if you haven't seen it, I urge you to go visit the Indiana Historical Society. See their exhibit, Resist, on resistance to the Klan. Some of the things I've been talking about are in that exhibit, and the center point of it is the so-called riot at Notre Dame. All right, I want to talk about the decline. When you're in any particular place, you've got to be nice and friendly and warm, or you won't have any friends in Hamilton County. But I have to say, when you look at the plaque outside there, it says the rapid decline of the Klan after 1925. My argument is it was not rapid. What happened in late 1925 is very significant, but it did not bring about the rapid decline of the Klan. What happened, of course, and others will tell this story, and you can find all kinds of good places to learn more if you don't know much about Madge Oberholzer. The best place to go now is the biography by Christine Ottinger. It's a very good treatment of her life, her story, of the horrible violence that D.C. Stevenson committed on this young woman that resulted in her death. A tragedy of major proportions and of major significance. And Madge Oberholzer is finally getting some of the of the recognition that she has long deserved. Madge Oberholzer died after the violence of D.C. Stevenson, but before she died, she gave a deathbed testimony, large parts of which were read in this very room, large parts of which provided the evidence that convicted D.C. Stevenson. This jury of 12 Hamilton County men voted to convict him, to sentence him to life in the Michigan City Penitentiary. It's ironic, I think we know that perhaps 2 of these jurymen were Klan members. D.C. Stevenson goes off to the Michigan City Penitentiary in late 1925. He is, and again, I didn't intend, and I don't intend to go into detail here. I'll answer questions if you have them. But just to sum it up, D.C. Stevenson is the candidate for the most evil, disgusting human being who ever walked the soil of Indiana. He really was bad, beyond bad. Bad, bad, bad. The opposite of everything the Klan professed to be. Obviously, that's going to cause a decline in the Klan, and it did. Some people said, if that's what you're about, we're finished. And they burned their robes and marched away. But what's also important is that the Klan continued in Indiana. As late as 1928, there were Klan candidates getting elected in elections, in local and state elections in Indiana. As late as the trial and the sentences is 1925. 3 years later, the Klan is still winning some elections. And as much as we want to celebrate the Pulitzer Prize that the Indianapolis Times won, it didn't come until 1928. If it had come in 1924 or 1925, we could really celebrate it today. I tell you this, I argue that the death of the Klan was not rapid, to make the point I made at the beginning, which is that the Ku Klux Klan is not a fluke event. It is a mainstream. And even after Stevenson's march to the penitentiary, actually the sheriff drove him there in his Studebaker, I think, even after that, more than a few Hoosiers are still attached to the Ku Klux Klan. It's not a fluke event. And the shadow remained long after 1928. Pretty much dead by 1930. There's some organizations that try to take on the mantle, including some here in Noblesville and other places. There are individuals who step up, but it's really no longer an active organization. But the ideals remain. We always have to talk about basketball, even when it's not in season. Though it's in season in WNBA, isn't it? And boy, do they play basketball. This is the story of Bill Garrett, who played at IU. Wherever he went to play basketball for IU, Ann Arbor, Champaign-Urbana, Evanston, he was the only black player on the court. The only one in the Big Ten. There's a very good book on Bill Garrett. He was from Shelbyville. He couldn't stay in the hotel when his team went to the state championship in the late 40s. A very good book called Getting Open about Bill Garrett. And another great basketball book by a Sports Illustrated, distinguished Sports Illustrated writer, Jack McCallan, called The Real Hoosiers, which focuses on the Crispus Attucks teams, which you all know, I hope, but is much, much more than the Crispus Attucks teams. It takes basketball off the court. It's not about the scores and the winnings and the cheerleaders and all that stuff. That may be important, but it takes us off the court into the culture and into the racial divisions that have challenged us for centuries. The ideals remain in Jim Crow segregation across the state, in movie theaters and restaurants and barbershops, and in public swimming pools. Not private, public, city-supported swimming pools like the one here in Noblesville, the one in Marion, and many other places in the state. Well, change comes, of course. The civil rights movement in the late 50s and early 60s begins to challenge these traditions of segregation and discrimination. Challenges them head on in very effective ways, so effective that it causes a backlash. Some white folks say, whoa, wait a minute, you're gone too far and too fast. Let's slow down. That's too radical. And it creates a space. One of the first indications is George Corley Wallace, the segregationist governor of Alabama, who enters the presidential primary in the Democratic Party in 1964. And he campaigns strongly in Indiana, gets a third of the white vote in the Democratic primary in 1964. Here's his headquarters hotel, the Claypool in Indianapolis, and protesters outside protesting his segregationist stand. But I want to point you to that flag. This is the first time I've seen this flag like this in Indiana. And I'm sure that young fellow would tell you, if we could ask him then, well, this is the flag of my heritage. This is the flag of a people who fought for their country, for their homes. Okay, you can have that opinion if you wish. My opinion is, it's the flag of racism. It's the flag of segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever, as George Corley Wallace said. That flag has become more and more, I'm not the only one who believes this, the flag of racial superiority. So the space created by the civil rights movement, the vacuum created, causes this backlash that allows some people to say, whoa, it's time for the Klan to come back again. They've gone too far, we got to slow this down, we got to stop this talk. Soon there'll be miscegenation, white will marry black, and God knows what will happen then. And so the Klan comes back, but it's a very different Klan. These boys really are the great unteachables. They really are bozos. Jerks, fools, so much so that sometimes I feel sorry for them because they are so out of touch with the world in which we live. The world has changed beyond their ability to understand it. And this is one of my favorite Klan photographs of all time. The fellow in the center here is wearing the militia-style uniform, which is that's going to continue and become more popular as we move forward. He's got the Klan insignia with the cross and the blood of Jesus in the center. He's got the battle flag on his forearm. Amazing. But my favorite guy is the fellow in the aviator sunglasses. So I spent 40 years trying to teach IU students how to read, write, think. That's the motto of Indiana Humanities, by the way. Read, write, think. It's a hard word, and I failed again and again to teach students how to use the word it's. There are two ways to spell it. This ain't one of them. I would like to give that guy a hug, you know? More seriously, here are three people watching this Klan rally in Kokomo. I don't know who they are. I love the photograph. I don't know what their stories are. But you can imagine the grandmother, the mother telling this young boy as he gets older about racism in America, about what might happen when he drives at night in the wrong part of the wrong town. And I hear these stories. You've heard these stories, I hope. I hope you know these stories of driving while black in America. We have had racial violence. Some of it sort of Klan connected in a way. The firebombing in Bloomington, On Christmas Eve of 1969, the murder of a young encyclopedia salesman in Martinsville, a great tragedy. There are historical markers now for both of these tragedies, thank goodness. We've had even more recent violence in Carmel and Terre Haute. We've had some people who said that the RFRA Act of 2015 was anti-gay, that it brought back sentiments of the Klan to Indiana in our own time. We've had this rally in Charlottesville in 2017 where our president said there were good people on both sides. The Klan member with the blood of Jesus on his chest. And on the right, in the militia gear, Matt Heimbach from Paoli, Indiana. A jerk of all jerks in all kinds of ways, but very smart and very sophisticated, who was one of the major organizers from Paoli, Indiana, of this horrible rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. So, what are we to do? I'm a historian, so I have only one thing to say, and that is history. More and more history. The answer is more history. And to be serious. To listen to our history, to understand our history. This is from the Meyer Sculpture Garden near Grand Rapids, Michigan. If you've not been there, I urge you to go. It's a wonderful place to visit. It's a great road trip. The sculptor has tied around the human head cords binding the book of history so that this person cannot see the past, this person cannot listen to the past, this person cannot read about the past. This person is ignorant. Ignorant to the point of dysfunctional in a democracy. You just can't have a democracy and not listen to your history. And so the question to leave you with, the question I think we should all ponder as we get sucked into the details of our lives today, our civic lives today in particular, is that great moral arc of the universe actually bending toward justice? Or is it now bending toward injustice, as some would say? And it's a fundamental question, the answers to which are exceedingly important, not to my generation, but to young people, like these are the 4 best kids on the face of the earth. What are their lives going to be like in a democracy? Liberty and justice for all. Will Abraham Lincoln continue to be the greatest American of all time as we move forward, as the arc bends? Thank you very much. I'm sorry I went just a little bit over there, but I would like very much to have comments and questions. And let me show you my email. There it is. If you're embarrassed or don't have time here, why, please send me an email. I'll try to answer you or get in touch. But I'd like to have comments and questions, and I can stay as long as anyone else can stay. But
well, one of the things that I want to clarify, the murder in Martinsville. Everybody's always been to Martinsville, Klan. And the person who committed murder came down from Plainfield.
right.
Which a lot of people would automatically associate with it was somebody from Martinsville.
Right.
Not.
Yeah, it was not. That's true. We know much more about that murder now, and it's not a Klan murder. A tragedy. And a tragedy for the people of Martinsville because it just added to a lot of incidents that have occurred in Martinsville where it got a bad reputation, whether deserved or not. If you want to know, I was talking about the importance. History is very important to business. You can use history to do lots of business and make a lot of money. But look at the counties around Indianapolis, the ring counties. I need not tell you where Hamilton County is on the list of per capita income and other forms of well-being. But which county is the outlier? It's Morgan County, the county seat of which is Martinsville. Is there a connection? You bet your socks. The young executives who come from the Harvard Business School to work at Eli Lilly and Company are probably not going to choose to live in Martinsville. They might want to because there are a lot of good people in Martinsville. And there are people like the Diversity Coalition here who've been trying for a long time to do good things in Martinsville. But they come up against this reputation that really is an impediment. Other comments or questions, please? Yes, back there.
We're originally from southwestern Indiana, Mount Vernon, and my husband tells me a historian there said there was a lynching at the courthouse in Mount Vernon.
There was. I don't know the details of that, but you can look that up on your Google machine because a young high school student in Mount Vernon just a few years ago took this on as a project, and the county commissioners or the city officials, get out of here, we don't want to talk to you. And she came back and she kept coming back and she forced them to acknowledge this lynching on the courthouse square in Mount Vernon in Indiana. And I think there's now a plaque there. She got national publicity for this. She was like 16 years old. Boy, I'd invest in her. I'd like her leading my university or my corporation or whatever.
It was 1878.
1878. All right. Just to follow up, we don't know how many lynchings there were in Indiana. There's a historian working on that now. I wish he'd finish his book. But there are more than 60 documented lynchings in Indiana in the late 19th, early 20th century. Many white people were victims, but over a third of them were African Americans who were lynched, which is one of the most horrible crimes in American history. Yes?
Does the Klan still exist in Indiana?
No, not really. I didn't say enough about this. I did say there are a bunch of jerks and ne'er-do-wells, and that's been true historically for the last 30, 40 years. Every once in a while, someone pops up and says, I'm the Grand Dragon of Klan number 428. And the newspaper, the media people love this, and so they go interview him. A team came from Louisville to interview this guy in Steuben County a few years ago, and he held the reporters hostage in his trailer. If it weren't so tragic, it really is comedy. So they're very small in number. They are ineffective. Whenever there's been a Klan rally in Indiana or parade, there's always more police showing up than Klan members. It costs, and the police have been frustrated by this because it costs so much money to protect the Klan from the people who want to throw tomatoes at them. The only thing to say more seriously is that what they are saying is so despicable. And of course, they've changed the enemies. Catholics are no longer the enemies. But Jews are the enemies, African Americans are the enemies. Gay people, LGBT people have really risen on the radar of enemy for the Klan and other such groups. And then sometimes just women, uppity women in particular, women who don't know their place. So they're full of hatred and vitriol, and they get some attention. They do not have the kind of bully pulpit, however, that the Klan had in Indiana in the 1920s. And I should have made that point a little more clearly, I guess. But as I was trying to suggest, the Klan was brilliant at getting its message out, at broadcasting its message, of causing people to believe in that message and to act on that message. They were just brilliant. Without electronic media, without all the other things that allow people today to do the same sorts of things that the Klan did in the 1920s. Yes?
So I'm going to profess ignorance of U.C. Stevenson. What was it about his trial in particular that led to such a downfall? Why did people no longer want to associate with him?
Well, because the trial was heavily, the room was full of newspaper reporters. And there weren't enough seats. There weren't nearly enough seats. People were outside wanting to come in, and they couldn't get in. But the newspapers daily reported what happened that day and the testimony. They quoted the testimony. And as I said, Madge Oberholzer's deathbed declaration was full of details. about what he did to her and what kind of man he was. And you know, that was hard to refute. Stevenson's defense attorneys tried to refute it. They tried to, you know, do the things you do when you have a witness like that, even when she's dead. But the details were so salacious, so outrageous, so disgusting. And then other evidence came out. And once he went, and it got worse, once he went to Michigan City, he wasn't a nice man. But he was a smart guy. He kept these little black boxes full of incriminating documents, 10,000 pieces of paper, someone estimated. And when his good buddy, Governor Ed Jackson, refused to give him a pardon because he thought he'd go there for a few weeks and Fast Eddie would get him out of there, and he didn't. And Stevenson started to carefully release the contents of his little back boxes to the newspapers. And so the stuff just built and built and built. Because the murder of Madge Oberholzer was the single greatest tragedy. But there are all kinds of other lesser crimes that he committed. Shenanigans, corruption, just horrible.
Can you talk a little about the difference, like when individuals become the organization? Like, it's easier in some respects to confront the organization than the ideology behind it. And seemingly what separates them is like a membership card, some dues. Like the Klan has a funny starting point.
Well, that's a very interesting subject, yeah. And I'm no expert on the theories of that, but the organization itself was very important. The Klaverns were very important because it gave people something to belong to. It helped lonely people. All people are lonely people. It gave them friends. It gave them community. It gave them like-minded people. And that was a very important part of the membership, of the identity, of the organization, because the organizing book I showed you the cover of, is full of ways to, you want to sing these songs together. You want to do these things that create this community. And then you're protected. Other like-minded people will protect you from the enemies. Did you have a follow-up? I don't think I answered your question exactly.
I don't know if my question was real clear either, but I'm struck by the idea that when you presented that there weren't lynchings, the Klan weren't responsible for lynchings, but and in the same vein, it's like those who remained silent were a community, and they didn't really identify as a community other than keeping their heads low. Like, I'm struck by how people organized themselves.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with the silent people, because it was very hard to organize silence. It's a contradiction in terms, isn't it? You remain silent, you just don't get involved. You walk around, you all know the Good Samaritan, some of you who grew up in the church. You walk beside the person and you ignore it. And that's the easy thing to do, of course. And I may not have made enough about the threat that the Klan presented. So it's easy for me to stand here and criticize those who were silent, to criticize the newspapers for not stepping up sooner. But you have to go back and remember how powerful the Klan was, how intimidating they were, the things they could do to you or they could threaten to do to you. They didn't need to do anything. They did occasionally. A man who was accused of being an adulterer, this was a standard that's happened more than once. They would go to his house in robes, they would pull him out and beat him, or they would just leave sticks on the porch or burn a cross in front of the house as a warning sign. But they didn't lynch him. But they intimidated people. And they had this sense of power. That's what the parades and the spectacles are about. You see those hundreds and hundreds of people marching down the street in robes and hoods with crosses, singing Onward Christian Soldiers. It's hard to stand up to that. And that's why, for example, the American Unity League is so important, because it provided an organization for resistance. The NAACP is so important. because it provided an organization for resistance. To resist on your own in a place, and most places in India were like this, where everyone knows who you are. Everyone knows who your parents are and your uncles and aunts and where you come from and what church you go to. Everyone knows everyone in this Indiana of the 1920s. Even in a place like Indianapolis, which is just a bigger small town in the 20s. And so it takes courage to stand up to what seems to be what was a very powerful organization. I saw a hand over here somewhere. Yeah, Brian.
It's not really a Klan question, it's really about the trial. Madge's deathbed testimony that she gave, was that a legal precedent in that trial, or had that been used before, do you know?
I'm no lawyer. I should have gone to law school, but I don't know whether, does anyone know if that was illegal? I don't think so, but I don't know. I know there was controversy that the defense, Stevenson's defense attorneys tried to not allow it to be admitted as evidence. And they made their case, can we trust this? Well, the two individuals, Kingsbury and Smith, who supervised the testimony and had her sign it. They read it to her and she did sign it. They argued that it was admissible, even though she could not testify in person. But I don't know, that's an interesting question.
Well, death confessions are permissible.
Are they?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. It seems to me they ought to be, but yes.
Say the trial had never happened, there was resistance building, did it need that catalyst for the
Yeah.
design, or was it eventually going to happen?
You know how historians hate counterfactual history?
What if?
I just told you how important the facts are. We just try to, remember Sergeant Friday? Just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. Some of you, most of you won't remember. I'll speculate. I think the Klan still would have gone down. I didn't talk about this, but the Klan by 1925, one of the reasons the legislature failed to pass much legislation in 25 was because they were fighting among themselves. And that's a good thing. There were all kind of factions, there were struggles for leadership, et cetera, et cetera. So they were fighting among themselves. And also, by 1924-25, with the election victories of the Klan, the legislature, I think more Hoosiers were able to see the risks to their freedoms, their lives, their well-being caused by this organization. And so I would like to think that Hoosiers would have stood up, continued to stand up in larger numbers, but it certainly would have taken longer. Yes?
Why, like in the larger national conversation of the stand resurgence in the 1920s, why do you think Indiana was such like a key player, and like why was it such a big deal here in Indiana?
Yeah.
Compared to other states?
Yeah. The question is really one of comparison of Indiana to the other 48 states. 48, yeah. We don't have enough membership data and numbers from all states. We have a little, Indiana, because we had such a strong Klan movement, because we have great historians. Indiana, the scholarship on the Klan in Indiana is richer than that of any other state. So we're making estimates here. I can't give you, a chart. I've seen charts, but I'm not sure they're very accurate. Indiana was not the only state with this level of strength and power for the Ku Klux Klan. There were other states. Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, New Jersey had powerful, large Oregon, very large Klan in Oregon. Illinois not as large as Indiana. Ohio not as large as Indiana. Kentucky not as large as Indiana, we think. I think it helped that Indiana had more white, Protestant, native-born people, a larger percentage than other states. Indiana was not, in our words today, as diverse as many other states. Indiana still had a lot of small country towns, which were not as, I want to say this nicely because I like small town America, I grew up in one. They weren't as sophisticated, as cosmopolitan, as prepared to accept change. One of the features of this I didn't mention and should have is that the world is changing radically during and after World War I. And change, and you know, we're going through that today. Change always scares us. Change always, whoa, I don't want to have to get a new iPhone. My iPhone's wearing out. I'm going to have to get a new phone, I guess. I hate that, change. But change is going to happen. The one thing a historian knows is it's always going to change. And things were changing rapidly in the early 1920s in a way that many traditional, settled sort of people found scary. Really, really scary. I don't know what's going on, but it's bad. Whatever, I haven't seen one of these movies with these flappers, but I know they're bad. So I think that's part of it. There's a heritage there. Indiana was among the least progressive states in doing away with racial discrimination in the 19th century. It started off with the Constitution in 1816, which prohibited black men from voting. And it got in a way worse after the Civil War in Indiana. Jim Crow really thrived in our state after the Civil War. So change was slow to come. And old ideas and old traditions. I quote, it's a wonderful poem I quote in the book. I can't do it now off the top of my head. How Hoosiers just like the smell of the new mown hay. And yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Please.
I have to ask, do you see any parallels in the rise of the Klan and the MAGA movement?
Yes. The last chapter of my book, I write about that. And not just MAGA, other things. I mean, the Tea Party defeat of Richard Lugar in 2012, one of the greatest senators we've had in Indiana history, beaten by a bozo. Yes, I think there are large similarities, but history, as several have said more and more, doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And there is some rhyme between, read the Fiery Cross. Read the Fiery Cross and see if it reminds you of, okay, we're in the opinion section now. Are you with me? I'm not a historian, I'm just a citizen. Read the Fiery Cross and see how it rhymes with Truth Social or the press secretary in the White House or some of my favorites, Kristi Noem. I mean, these people lie in very much the same way that the Klan lied. And they have different but similar enemies. They are them. They are those people, not us. We are the Americans. We wave the flag. I try to fly my American flag often. My wife sometimes says, people will think you're a Trumper flying that flag like that. Don't surrender the flag to them. It's my flag. I'm as patriotic as any MAGA person, in my own opinion, and that's all that counts on this subject. So, yes, I think there are similarities, but there are also differences. And the important difference is that the Klan, while it never really ruled Indiana, Stevenson said, I am the law in Indiana. That was never true. Very powerful, but not the law. The law still worked in Indiana. And a lot of Americans, most Americans, had no use for the Klan in the 1920s. Today, we have a movement that is nationwide, that is very powerful, very organized, very sophisticated, and in my opinion, very dangerous to the heart of democracy. But that's my opinion, and I gave you my email. You can rant and rave and send me all kind of evidence for your opinion.